Let's bring Josh Norris, NBC Sports, Roto World, into the conversation here as we look at the NFL draft following the Senior Bowl. Josh, first off, welcome aboard.
Well, thank you, guys. I appreciate it. And hopefully you'll give me a chance to sell you guys on an interior offensive lineman in the first round.
Well, it's interesting because last week one of the Eagle writers was talking about that very player, and then I was looking at your mock draft from January the 21st, and I said, lo and behold, there's his name, penciled in at 13, so you have the floor.
Well, so here it is, right? And I think for a long time we believed that left tackle was the most pivotal position along the offensive line. And it's not necessarily because of the blind side, it's because that's where all the best pass rushers came from, right? And now we see great pass rushers coming from the right side, and more importantly, the interior. And it's not just in these sub-package situations where these edge rushers then move inside. It's also on base downs. Just look at the two teams in the Super Bowl right now, right? You have the Carolina Panthers. They're not great at the edge, but they're defensive tackles that are off. Then you have the Denver Broncos. They're great at the edge, but they're also very good on the interior as well. So I'm of the opinion that the Eagles could use new starters at guard, and I think you can absolutely use that position in the first round. Select a player that is solely stay at guard in the first round. We've seen it work with the Cowboys, we saw it work with the Redskins, and I think we can see it work with the Eagles.
Yeah, and it's, an interesting thought process considering, too, the Eagles have Jason Peters for 3 more years. We don't know how much longer he's going to fulfill that, and they just gave a big deal to Lane Johnson, so you would think at least for next year their tackle spots are already locked down.
Yeah, and again, even if someone just is going to stay at guard, because that is the fabric of the pocket right now, tackles are just taught to ride these defensive ends around the pocket, and then the quarterback can just step up. Well, he can't step up if there's interior disruption. And really, interior pressure is king right now. Nothing disrupts an offense and changes an offense more than interior disruption. It's not just against statue quarterbacks that you have seen a lot as of late, but it's also these mobile guys, because then they don't really have the lane to run out of as well. So, I do think that, like you guys do, offensive line is the most pivotal position, but I'm even of the opinion, like I said, that top 15 pick can be spent on a guard.
Yeah, Josh, I don't even necessarily disagree with you, because you mentioned, sugar in those so-called A gaps. Mike Zimmer is famous for doing it. He does it so well, and everyone is sort of trying to copycat off of that. But my take on it is this, and the fact that GMs in this league still allocate assets towards certain positions, and even if that thinking is sort of antiquated, that's where we are. Do you kind of dismiss that and see that changing?
No, you know what? A lot of what the NFL does is because it's always been done that way, right? And I don't disagree with what you're saying in that regard at all. I'm just trying to progress the thought process a little bit, right? Just from the outside. Obviously, a lot of teams still believe they can get their starting linebackers, off-ball linebackers, and guards later on in the draft. And I think you can say that for any position, honestly. But I've just seen the success, and you guys have as well, of what the Cowboys did with Zach Martin, another left tackle that transitioned to guard. Brandon Scherff with Washington, another left tackle that transitioned to guard. I'm not saying Whitehair is of the caliber of those two, but I do think that any kind of transition from left tackle to guard can make sense, and a pure guard can absolutely change an offensive success, not only in the running game, but also in the passing game as well.
Josh Norris with us, NBC Sports, Roto World, looking at the NFL draft. All right, the Senior Bowl in the books, and, there's an opportunity for a lot of guys to make some moves here. Did that week and that game change your opinion on some of these guys, specifically some of the guys in the, first, second round of that draft?
Well, and I don't want to continue this theme too long on just the interior, but at defensive tackle, Sheldon Rankins from Louisville entered the week as my number 1 prospect down there in Mobile, Alabama, and he left it too, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's the same way as many other people. Sheldon Rankins, I'm not saying he is Kawan Short, but he plays a similar game in terms of hand use and intent to create separation, and is an excellent pass rusher up the middle. Noah Spence, former Ohio State edge player who is now at Eastern Kentucky, obviously left, now going to the NFL, but Noah Spence is an awesome player. He can win with both speed and power. off the edge. And obviously everyone's talking about Braxton Miller, the quarterback to wide receiver conversion. To me, there's a lot of wasted movement in his routes, and he used that a lot to his advantage, obviously, to create separation because no one moves like him down there at the Senior Bowl. But I think there's a lot of natural receiving skills there as well. I think we saw it in the first game of the season against Virginia Tech. I think that, transitioning just from a pure receiver standpoint is not as big of an issue as much as it is the nuance and the detail of the position. And it's going to be a big question if he's just a slot receiver, a manufactured touch player, or if he can be on the field as well in just two wide receiver sets.
Josh, one of the guys we're interested here in this market is Tyler Matakevich from Temple. And there's a guy to me who obviously maybe doesn't have the skill set you look for as a first or second round pick, but those football instincts are off the charts. How do you think he did down in Mobile?
Yeah, guys, I'm going to do my best to stay away from the buzzwords and the stereotypes here. I will say this. I think that I like the other three Temple prospects more than I like Matakevich in terms of projection to the NFL. But I'll say this. Like you guys said, he knows where to get in position. He knows many ways and many times where the football is going, right? You can tell he's a smart football player. The thing is, I'm not sure if he has the athleticism to compensate when he takes a wrong step, when he moves in the wrong direction, when he hesitates a little bit too long. We saw that in the actual Senior Bowl game when there was a fullback guy pitched to the outside, and he took one or two steps forward and then got beaten to the edge for a 4 or 5 or 6 yard gain to the outside. Again, I do think he gets drafted 6th, 7th round, might make sense, and I bet he sticks in a roster for a long time, but I would not look at him as an adequate starter or better for a roster that I was building.
What do you think about, I want to get your opinions on the quarterbacks because by most people's accounts, this is not a great quarterback class. So how do you surmise this year's quarterback class? How many first-rounders and how deep is the class?
Yeah, guys, last year I was right in the debate in terms of quarterbacks. I loved both the quarterbacks last year, and Jameis Winston and Marcus Mariota. Had them as the top 2 prospects in the draft. Going to kind of fly under it this year because I really don't see a first-round prospect in this year's class. Now, I absolutely think 2 or 3 or 4 are going to be taken in the first round. And everyone's always talking about Carson Wentz from North Dakota State. Wentz is not afraid to test vertically. He's not afraid to go downfield, and it's not just these wide-open receivers that we see all the time at the college level. It's the covered receivers, one-on-one matchups, and he allows his receivers to win those matchups. And I think that's a great trait to have in the NFL. Jared Goff has a bit of projection, right? And we've seen that in previous years that has kind of been an issue in terms of some NFL evaluators wanting to project that. He might have only had 7 or 8 really called passing plays or types of passing plays at Cal. That's kind of just what Sonny Dykes likes to do. But, man, he had some incredible vertical throws with touch and loft and plate. And Paxton Lynch is kind of I'm not saying he's declining, obviously, because he hasn't done anything since the season. But he kind of fits your buzzwords in terms of height, weight, speed, arm, mobility, that type of stuff. And we'll kind of see what he does here at the Combine and throughout the rest of the process.
Hey, Josh, 2 of the best athletic players to me in this draft are both coming off serious injuries. Both linebackers, Jalen Smith from Notre Dame, Miles Jack from UCLA. How do you think those injuries will affect them in the process? And Smith specifically, because his injury was later in the Fiesta Bowl, right. And you'd have to wait a while. He's probably not going to be ready first week of September. How far do you think he could possibly fall?
Yeah, and first let's just go over Miles Jack. I'm so excited that you brought his name up because I think he's the top player in this entire draft. He moves differently than any other of these other linebackers. You've seen him cover in the slot wide receivers and then move aggressively as a stack linebacker in between the tackles. And everything's on track for him to go to the Combine and tear it up. Obviously, he's kind of already healed from that meniscus injury. Like you said, Jalen Smith, much more of a projection. Tony Pauly reported that he's on track, kind of like Cedric Ogboy he was with the Cincinnati Bengals, right? Maybe be ready during the middle of his rookie season, but it just depends on the team need, if they need him to play at that time. Probably, obviously, open the season on the PUP list or one of those injury lists as well. I don't think that they're of equal talent. Like I said, I think Miles Jack is the best prospect in this entire draft, but I do think Jalen Smith is worthy of a first-round grade. and a first-round selection, probably most likely to teams that have a little bit of patience and aren't, under fire, under duress in terms of their jobs during next season.
I want to ask again, too, about, you mentioned Miles Jack there, who UCLA linebacker, and, of course, that linebacker position now, last year Philadelphia, they ended up getting Hicks in the 3rd round. They already had Kendricks. They got Kiko Alonso, but they still don't have that pass rusher. It seems like that elite pass rusher. Now, it looks like they're going 4-3, so they might not need to go that route, but is that an area where they can get some help because they might need to find someone to play that strong side?
Right, and it's an interesting thing when teams change up their decision makers and their coaching staffs and really what they look for in prospects, right? And so this change to a 4-3, obviously, I think fans will get very upset if a team if they draft a linebacker early, but they might need to, because I'm not sure if any of these 3 linebackers fit a Jim Schwartz style in terms of these stack linebackers that need to take up a lot of space or be aggressive moving forward because of how big of these splits are that he likes to use up front. We know that he will likely implement some of these wider techniques, wider alignments from his front 4 defensive linemen. And previously he has liked bigger defensive ends that they can move inside the defensive tackle. One name to keep in mind, Jahad Ward from Illinois, about 6'5", 6'6", 295 pounds, can win with strength on the outside, can move inside and really dominate in terms of quickness and burst and everything that you want. I'm going to list him as a top 40 pick. I'm not sure if anyone else will. I think you can get him in the 2nd round, and he's kind of the type that Jim Schwartz has gravitated to, kind of like a Jason Jones type in previous years.
Well, it's interesting, too, because there's a lot of talk here about Fletcher Cox and maybe getting that $100 million deal. It seems that defensive tackle is a spot that Schwartz really looks at as well. And you wonder, is Cox and Logan, are those 2 guys? Cox certainly is. Logan moving on to the 4-3. They're going to probably need to find another guy in that rotation. Probably not at 13, obviously, but maybe a little bit deeper in the draft. That, as you mentioned, that interior defensive line position has become so important in the NFL.
Yeah, you guys have nailed it, and it's not just about the base defense, it's about the rotation too. And rotating these front 4 defensive linemen, front 5 in some other teams, is so important because it gets fresh bodies in there and you can make an impact in just some sub-package situations. Other than linebacker, off-ball linebacker, I would say that defensive tackle is the deepest position in this class. I'll give you another name, Vernon Butler, Louisiana Tech. He reminds me a lot of Mo Wilkerson coming out of school, coming out of Temple. Vernon Butler uses his hands. He just moves differently than other players at that spot. He's already 6'2", 6'4", 325 pounds. So he can hold up against the run, but he already uses his hands to disengage and has his counter moves as well that I really look for among those interior players.
Talking with Josh Norris of NBC Sports, and Roto World does a great job covering the NFL draft. Josh, I want to sort of go back to the quarterback position for 1 minute because the Eagles have a difficult decision to make at that position. And obviously Sam Bradford is going to project to make anywhere from 18 to 21 million. He's 25, 37-1, I believe, as an NFL starter. So there is some serious thought that the Eagles might take this opportunity to reboot at that particular position, go with sort of a bridge quarterback, and sort of what Doug Peterson was to Donovan McNabb back in 1999. Do you think if a Paxton Lynch or a Wentz is sitting there at 13, are they worthy of that particular spot?
So I'll give you guys a bit of a prediction, and I'm sure you've heard this one before, right? I think the Eagles somehow, some way just let Sam Bradford go, don't want to pay that contract. I think he then meets up with Chip Kelly in San Francisco because they're apparently buds. And then Colin Kaepernick heads to Cleveland under Hugh Jackson. I think that's kind of the progression that we're kind of headed to. Or I could be completely wrong, as I am in many situations. But here's the thing. Again, first-round quarterbacks, I do not believe there is a plug-and-play quality starter in this draft. I thought there has been in previous years. I thought it was with Marcus Mariota and Jameis Winston. But if the Eagles believe one is worthy of a first-round pick, he should absolutely be at the top of their board, right? And you don't usually fall in love with a number of quarterbacks, 2 or 3 quarterbacks in the draft, usually there's one guy that you kind of hang your hat on. He's your guy, and you do everything you can to go and get him. I can see them doing that. Now, they obviously don't have a second-round pick, more ammunition to go up and trade for someone. But, yes, I could see a team going and getting a Carson Wentz, a Paxton Lynch at number 13. And also, I'm sure you guys have heard this as well, wouldn't be surprised if Chase Daniel ends up in Philadelphia as well.
What about if you're a team that says, you know what, maybe there isn't a first-round guy? Do you see guys in that second or even third round that would be attractive options and not take your chances of, swinging and possibly missing in that first round? Do you like some of these second, third, maybe fourth-round, mid-round guys in this year's draft?
Well, I like the idea of taking multiple mid-level shots over a couple of years and hopefully hitting on one. The Seattle Seahawks did it a long time ago not a long time ago, but with Tavares Jackson, with Charlie Whitehurst, and then Matt Flynn, and then hitting on, obviously, Russell Wilson. I don't love the second or third tier quarterbacks this year, but mainly in the third tier, I kind of, everyone always points to high ceiling quarterbacks that are projects, and to me that just doesn't work in the NFL because, one, you don't have enough time, and two, players kind of are who they are in many ways. Strengths get stronger, weaknesses don't really turn into strengths, but some who fit that mold, Brandon Allen from Arkansas. Obviously, everyone kind of associates a running game with the Razorbacks, but Brandon Allen, they put the offense on his back this year. He really handled it very well, made a number of NFL throws, or what the NFL calls NFL throws. Kevin Hogan from Stanford is kind of the same thing. Every year, kind of out for him. This year, he came on very strong. And Jacoby Brissett from NC State. He's not a big play downfield threat at all, but in terms of working inside structure, going through the progressions that a coach wants, he can absolutely do that and can make you pay within 20 yards down the field.
Josh, I want to ask you about a couple local guys that could be first-round picks. Three Big Ten guys, really. One being Eli Apple, who played at Eastern, which is about 40 minutes from here. The other one, Austin Johnson, who played at St. Augustine, which is about 45 minutes from here. Both of those guys, Big Ten guys, could those both guys be getting their name called in the first round?
Yeah, honestly, and I always hate having this answer, but I really haven't watched a lot of Eli Apple yet. And I'd rather tell you guys that beforehand rather than try to make up something off the top of my head. In this next month going up into the Combine, that's kind of where I'm going to study these early declarations. And Eli Apple is one. But, yes, I've absolutely seen his name mentioned with first-round potential. The other side, Austin Johnson of Penn State. He's most likely a one technique, a guy that's going to play next to the center in a 4-3 most likely. But to me, he has some upfield ability from there. You don't see that a lot. A lot of times you see these run stuffers just placed at that position and then, like we always talked about, rotated out in sub-package situations. I don't think Austin Johnson is a liability at all on any 3 downs. I think he can be a starter in the NFL in that nose tackle, that under tackle in a 4-3. Absolutely.
And one last guy in the Big Ten is Hackenberg. So many opinions on him. He was a top quarterback coming out of high school. I guess
Right.
Kind of fell flat at Penn State. Where do you see him? Is somebody going to take a big swing on him early?
Someone will, and not too early. I would say late second round, third round, probably by the end of the second day he'll be off the board. Everyone has the Christian Hackenberg take, right? Mine is that he wasn't as good as people thought during his freshman season. Then things went wrong, right? The offensive line went wrong. The coaching absolutely was terrible. And he wasn't good either. Even when his other parts, the skill positions went well, offensive line played well, he didn't play well outside of 2 or 3 games. And we always talk about quarterback tools, right? He has a big arm. He has mobility. He has size. He makes these throws. But to me, Christian Hackenberg didn't put the tools together enough, or at least on a consistent basis, to warrant a top 100 selection. I'm just not sold on him at all. And if you're drafting him, you're drafting based on buzzwords and tools, in my opinion.
Josh, when we talk about marquee positions in the NFL today, obviously it starts with quarterback. But beyond that, probably the next thing everybody wants is an edge pass rusher. And one guy that I'm sort of falling in love with is Noah Spence from Eastern Kentucky. And a lot of people don't know him, but he was at Ohio State, got in trouble. So this is a guy with top-tier talent. If he was still with the Buckeyes, he'd probably be a top 10 pick. What do you think about him and how he did at the Senior Bowl?
Yeah, he should still be a top 15 pick. Your eyes aren't fooling you. I mean, he's an awesome player. Noah Spence, like you mentioned, he was kicked off the Ohio State football team. And my buddy Dane Brugler at CBS Sports reported that everyone he's talked to still within the Ohio State program still speaks very highly of Noah Spence, even though they obviously had to get rid of him from scholarship. I think that'll go a long way. And everyone always talks about character concerns and character questions. Well, what if there aren't questions anymore? What if there aren't concerns anymore? What if he has turned his life around? And I think Noah Spence on the field is an absolute stud. He's clearly the number 2 edge rusher in this class behind his former teammate, I guess, and Joey Bosa. And Spence, like I mentioned before, he can win with speed around the edge, which is something Bosa can't do. But he also will explode into your chest, into your face, and demolish you at the point of attack. I think Noah Spence is an awesome player, and he should be off the board within the first 15 picks.
Josh Norris, Roto World, NBC Sports, covers the NFL draft, and hopefully throughout the draft process we can catch up with Josh a little bit more as this thing gets a little deeper, as the Eagles at 13, a lot higher than they've been the last couple of years. We'll see what materializes over the next couple of weeks. Josh, we appreciate your time.
Absolutely, guys. Anytime.